thank you, everyone, so much for the chance to chat with you. Chandler, Isaiah, Romina. This was the movie. It's called I Like Movies, but I loved this movie. It was just a wonderful story. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all. Chandler, let's start with you. What made you want to tell this story?
I think for me, it was just like a biological imperative, like the way that I think other people want to be mothers. I really wanted to make like a Canadian coming of age movie, and sort of make this portrait of my adolescence, which was like I'm an ex-Blockbuster video employee. I grew up in Burlington, Ontario. I was kind of a dick in high school and I was obsessed with Stanley Kubrick movies. And I felt like I hadn't kind of seen that story like told kind of through like a dramedy lens before. And and I kind of just wanted to unpack this cultural trope of like the film bro at the kind of most intense formation of their ego, as teenagers.
And it absolutely does. I love that this is a film that sort of it deals with the psychology of youth and nostalgia and storytelling all in this complex sort of ball. It works so well. Isaiah, Romina, I'm wondering from your perspective, do you think this is a film or about films? Do you think we turn to films and movies to help us understand ourselves better?
Yeah, people use media to cope with all manner of things. You know what I mean? To cope with like the monotony of everyday living, like throwing a movie on when you get home from work, to processing like intense emotional trauma through like the art you consume. It's literally like magic. Like art is magic, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, Romina, I was wondering, without giving away any of the spoilers here, one of the things that Alana believes so firmly, as we see in this film, is that movies aren't fun. Now, we understand why based on her experiences later on, but I was wondering from your perspective, the average person that isn't involved in the industry, do you think we glamorize it? And if so, why do we do that? I mean, it is somebody else's job. We don't glamorize the dentist or something like that. What is it about cinema that makes us glamorize it?
Isn't that funny? It's so true. Yeah, I think we do glamorize it in a way that's not entirely accurate to what reality is in terms of what it is like to shoot a film. The crazy long hours, the sleepless nights, the a lot of caffeine to stay awake and energized, memorizing scripts, redirects, people not getting along. And then, and at the end of the day, you might be your film might be blowing up, but you may still not be able to make rent. I mean, like it's so glamorized because of press, because of media. And it's sort of this sword we die on, but the sword we need to keep movies so impactful in a way. But I think all the glamour and all the intrigue doesn't really compare to sitting in a dark room, witnessing someone else's heartbreak and internalizing it to help you like metabolize your own heartbreak. Like there's no amount of glamour that can sort of overcast the impact that happens, in that hour and a half of cinema.
It's so true. And there's something about doing that in a room together with other people as well. I think the pandemic has reminded us of this. There's something special about that together.
Yeah, there's so many love letters to movies that came out this year, like Empire of Light and The Fabelmans. Even Everything Everywhere All at Once kind of feels like that too. I think that we just missed it so much that I feel like when we were unable to go to the movies, like everybody kind of wrote these stories about trying to go back to the cinema again.
Yeah.
But Romina, that was so beautifully put. My goodness.
Thank you. Thanks. Even just to what you were saying, that just the experience of being in the theater again, sitting with other people. I remember the first movie I went to see when the COVID allowances were made available and you could go walk. It was moving just to walk in and sit there. It's just like, wow, like I missed this experience, you know, and it is becoming more challenging to get movies in theaters. So
yeah. I mean, I feel like even just being kind of the first TIFF back when you could actually watch movies in theaters again without having to be spaced out like 10 seats apart, or you know, it was like really surreal and really, really powerful to kind of be back with audiences again. And we were just, Romina and I were just at our LA, kind of US premiere in Santa Barbara. We were in this like really beautiful historic theater, and there were like 1,500 people there, not 15,000. Yeah.
It was
like the jokes, just hearing like that many people laugh and gasp and kind of react to something that we all created together was like astonishing.
And you know, I know it's a different experience, but there's something about the video store that I miss. Isaiah, you missed this. Or at least I think you probably did.
A bit, sort of. I had like childhood experiences going to Blockbuster and stuff. And I grew up in Vancouver Island in Nanaimo, like as a young child. So I feel like Vancouver Island is always like kind of like Canada's behind the US, and then Vancouver Island is behind BC. So it's really like I was living in the 90s in Nanaimo. So there was like a Blockbuster in a strip mall similar to the one in Ajax, and you go to McDonald's and A&W and the dollar store. But then I would rent like a SpongeBob movie, you know, like that's kind of where I was at.
Yeah, that's the difference between us. I was like, I'll take the 12 Couleurs trilogy at the same time, but he was like, SpongeBob, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's a great point right there. Just even that little statement there, because one of the things we see with Lawrence in this film, he keeps talking about real cinema, and there's been a huge conversation the last few years about what makes real cinema. So I'm just wondering for you all, what do you think qualifies? Is there such a thing as real cinema? And I'm using air quotes, or if so, what is it?
This is a great question. I mean, I feel like it just has to be anything that makes you feel something, right? And, you know, if you're like crying and melting down because of SpongeBob, like that's great. I don't really like believe in guilty pleasures, you know, and I think also there's something really wrong about that idea of real cinema, because it's actually usually like a canon that's been set up by men and largely prioritized kind of like white male auteurs, you know, I think a lot of like the films that really resonated with me, like Amy Heckerling's Clueless, like those are not movies that are on the Criterion Collection as of yet, but they should be. And there's a lot of, I think, women and people of color and queer creators that were always making movies like throughout the history of cinema. And only now are we kind of like going back and recontextualizing those films and going like, oh my God, there's been so many gaps. So yeah, I feel like for me, it's just really important that, you know, like whatever's real cinema is like a personal cinema. I feel like we all have to kind of decide what we love together. And that's kind of what's so great about the way that film is being kind of, the discussion of film is being kind of disseminated now online, like on Twitter and websites like Letterboxd and stuff. And it kind of allows more movies to kind of be lifted up and those filmmakers to kind of be supported and celebrated now.
Yeah, absolutely. We are running out of time. I believe me, I
wish we could talk more.
I wish we could.
Right, yeah.
Thank you all so much for your time. It is just, the film is a joy, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great questions. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.